Thank you, Rantir. Questions have come in, so we will be using our final 15 minutes of the panel. Panelists, prepare yourselves. Although before I move into the questions that have come in, I did want to mention that this may be a first for the CEO Water Mandate working sessions. An offer of collaboration has come in, and so Arnavo, I need to pass this on to you. There will be a broker's fee, by the way, but I'll let you follow up on that. Sorry, that was a request from someone in the audience. So the person that submitted that card, you can follow up with Arnavo at lunch. But again, don't forget the broker's fee. Okay, so several questions have come in, and what I'd like to do is rather than necessarily ask them specifically, because sometimes they zero in on a specific point that an individual company made, I want to make them a little more general, so there's an opportunity for all of the panelists to respond. But the first question that came in was initially directed to Tata, and so I'll go in your direction first. But to broaden it, and the question is basically around you need to engage staff. You needed to engage staff in the water footprinting exercise. All of you have had to engage staff and ask for their cooperation and commitment to a change in behavior. And the question here really is, well, how welcome was that, and was it merely looked at as additional work? And then I'd like to tag on the follow-on was, to the extent that there was initial resistance because this is change, how did you work with that? How did you get that critical engagement? All right, so Arnavo, may I ask here if we can just... Thank you.
Yes, is this on?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. The way we went about it is that in 2008, when we started the climate change journey, we set up a climate change steering committee, and our chairman at that time, Mr. Tata, appointed one of his senior-most colleagues, Dr. Irani, to drive this. And he's a person who had immense credibility, not only within Tata Group, but in Indian industry. So that really helped. He quickly made a steering committee which had his peers from the holding company board, Tata Sons, and also the CEOs of all the major operating companies. So there was the message from the top that this is a serious initiative which we need to pursue. Secondly, unlike other initiatives, any resource efficiency initiatives helps in improving productivity and saving costs. So in terms of once we got that message across, that helped. And lastly, again, within the Tata Group, we do our Tata Sons does not try to be the repository of all knowledge and information. When you work in Tata Sons, your job is to empower other Tata managers in the line companies and make them smarter, and that's how we are judged, as the group within Tata Sons who was driving this. So I guess this would be the three key measures that you took.
Thank you. Martin, I'm going to ask you to speak to that question as well. And I'm happy to repeat it if that would be helpful.
Yeah, well, that was an excellent response, and I could actually echo very much what has just been said. So really, not much more to add, I'm afraid. Clearly very important, we often think about the external stakeholders, but we as Sasol, small but 34,000 employees, to get them engaged. It's also the commitment from the top is really important, setting up your committees and driving it through. We do have an interesting initiative, which I'm sorry I perhaps didn't mention. We're calling it WaterSense, which is a platform that's been created through which we will be aligning and coordinating all our water initiatives. And I think that's something very exciting, but it's perhaps too early to really go and talk about the successes. But that's an area we have worked on quite hard. Thank you.
Great. Martin? Mike, can I also ask you, and Rancher, I'll ask you as well. And just so you know, Ruth, I'll be headed to you first with the next question. So.
For us, it was really important to make it very real for the employees. In addition to demonstrating that our leadership was engaged, it was important to show them how water impacted their communities and how we impacted the community. So the good news is it was fairly simple when you get a group of people out engaged in the community and doing very simple things to also very complex things, just how the impacts of the watershed can impact their careers, their jobs, their families, and their communities. So I think communication information was very helpful, and then showing them that it, again, wasn't the program of the month and that we were behind it and it wasn't going to just be a flash in the pan to meet our objectives for the year.
Mm-hmm. Terrific. Randy?
In our case, rather, we emphasized on answering the question why. Why should we do it? And basically the answer lied in is that we just remain to a certain part of what solution we have offered, like passing the water through those tubes to the roots is not going to bring that change. And unless and until there is a right return for the farmer, we have to go on doing these additional services for the farmer, and then there was a greater cross in collaborating with this. I think our communication to make the engagement of employees effective lies in the answering question why.
Mm-hmm. Terrific, thank you. We have a few minutes, if I can move into a second question. Ruth, this panel, you, I think, anchored this panel, and you were following on a slide that Suresh presented in the earlier session on the water stewardship progression. So there's sort of two questions as part of that. The first is, it does seem that everyone on this panel is using at least a relatively common framework around the concept of water stewardship progression. So the first question is, would you agree with that? Do you see a sense of commonality in terms of the concept and the elements of the water stewardship progression? The other is that when you look at the response or the solutions that have been proposed by different companies, and in part I come back to the Tata diagram of the different company components, and that there were very different responses depending on the nature of the water risk that was identified. Does that correlate with the water stewardship progression? And does it? And I guess the real question there is, does the water stewardship progression set up expectations that moving along the progression represents implicitly improvement in better performance by the company, but then how does that compare with the notion of different solutions to different potential water risks? So, if you could tackle those, is that right?
I think I can.
Okay.
I'll give it a try.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So, I think it's very important for us to kind of repeat the conversation about this water stewardship progression. There's been a number of ways that it's been discussed. I took the one from the Corporate Water Disclosure Guidelines by the CEO Water Mandate. It doesn't exactly fit the way I would put it, but I think the key message, and I think we're hearing it resoundingly from different directions, is that you do need to look at yourself and the efficiency and the sustainability of your water use. You need to look in your value chain. You need to make it part of your corporate culture, and then you need to engage with others as appropriate for that water security, for that sustainability. So in a way, I think we're all repeating that because what other things could we add there? There's a certain logic to it. Mm-hmm. What I saw with the Tata project was that everybody did look inside their fence line to see where they could make improvements in their operations. And then that would also, the sustainability assessment and the supply chain and all of that would, that the water footprint assessment alerted where else to look. So everybody starts with themselves, and that's why the stewardship progression starts there. And so we really saw identification of operational changes that could reduce their water footprint. But then, for instance, with Tata Motors, where they have this really high amount of their water footprint in the supply chain, then okay, the next step is to engage with the supply chain. With toxic chemicals and methylpore, it's a very water scarce area, and so they have a lot of watershed activities going on. So it's the context of the series that helps determine what's the next step beyond operations.
Mm-hmm. Terrific. Thank you. Well done. All right. So I think we have time for at least one more question. And again, this is another example where it's a question that's first specifically asked to Sasol. So Martin, I'll head in your direction. But I would like to get others to comment on this as well. The question is, what advice would you give to companies looking to get involved in municipal water supply? Two-part question here, so that's part one. And part two, is there a role for the private sector in securing water supply for those who legally lack access within municipalities? So two-part question, what would be your advice for getting involved in municipal water supply? And two, sense of role for the private sector in that context. And then if I may, I'd like to right here, Mike and Arbanavo, ask you as well, please. Martin?
Right, thanks.
Yeah.
Well, water supply has not really been our focus of attention. Our focus has been freeing up water to ensure better water security across the catchment. So maybe that's the pretext that I actually don't have a view on water supply. I think it can be, certainly in a South African context, I think it's about public-private partnerships in executing projects rather than actually really deliberating on the actual supply of water. So I'm going to perhaps leave a bit of a poor answer on that one. But the overall experience we have in working with local government is actually quite a positive one. I think there is, once, as I showed and tried to show in that model, once you can see there's something for everybody, I think you're on a much better trajectory to progress and bringing out some success in it. So that's the sort of guidance I'd like to leave, is make sure there's something in it for everybody and they can see the linkages and the potential benefits. Thank you.
Terrific. Mike, do you mind taking that one?
Sure, thank you.
Okay.
I'm not sure I exactly understand the question, but I'll throw a few things out there trying to address it. In some of our breweries, we provide our own water supply and water treatment, but then in others, we rely totally on municipal water supply. And that was a different conversation to have with those brewing units, because in some ways, initially, years ago, they felt, well, it's not our problem. The municipality will provide the water. I quickly informed them that if you're the largest user of that water, from a demand standpoint, that you're likely the largest discharger to that municipality as well, so it's best to get involved now. Because as most people are aware, infrastructure across the globe is beginning to be challenged. And so we're involved with municipalities, and in many cases trying to take a leadership role in the education, such that the municipality is aware of the challenges within the watershed. Where do they get their water from? What are their risks? Because once again, just like with our ag suppliers, if the municipality does not have a viable, sustainable water supply, neither will we.
Terrific. Mike, thank you. Rand here?
The first part of the question, I may not be the relevant person to advise on that. Mm-hmm. But the second part is the role in the area where the municipal water is used. I think in India, the reprocessing of the water or the grey water, use of that for purposes which can use that water is quite low, and that's an area which can be area we can act upon, and that's where our role as corporates can be there.
Rand here, thank you. Abnaro, could you address this as well? Thank you.
I thought I'll get away with it.
That's okay. I can call lunch.
Okay, I'll give a quick reply. I mean, one is of course in Jamshedpur. where historically Tata set up the city, and we run the water supply there. And probably my colleague Mr. Mishra can give some details on how that is progressing. The other perspective I would have is like what we are doing in Delhi. In Delhi, we actually have a joint venture company with the Delhi government, but in the power supply, So and that's been a relatively successful model. And the question is, can we have a similar kind of a setup in the water supply business? And do we have the necessary regulatory framework which would enable such a business to perform?
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. We need to move to launch. Panelists, just hold one moment, all right? Because if you're still here, participants will listen to me. That would be helpful. So we have a 45-minute lunch scheduled.